All right. Okay, good evening, everyone. Tonight is a meeting of the Cohasset Select Board. This is June 6th. It is 6 p.m. Tonight's meeting will be conducted in person at the Wilcox Commons, i.e. the Senior Center, and also on the Zoom platform. It will also be live streamed on Cohasset's Facebook page, which you can access on our website and on the agenda. And it may also be filmed on Cohasset 143. The public is invited to participate on the Zoom platform, which can be accessed using the link on the second page of the agenda for tonight's meeting. Members of the board and other scheduled participants will be able to participate when called upon by the chair. Board members will be able to ask questions of any participant. All votes taken at this meeting will be by roll call if necessary. Members of the public who wish to ask questions are asked to raise their virtual hand on Zoom, and at the discretion of the chair will be promoted into the meeting. Members must provide their full name. Members of the public must provide their full name and address for the record. Please note comments on platforms other than Zoom will not be monitored. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on Cohasset 143 TV and Cohasset's Facebook page. So I'd like to call to order this first meeting. I'd like to call to order this meeting. Mr. Plex, could you identify yourself? Okay.
Jack Creighton here.
Ellen Mar present.
Paul Grady present.
Dean Healy-Dippold present. All are invited to join the board in the Pledge of Allegiance if they wish to participate. You know what? We'll do that at the public comment period because we are bringing the flag in right now. So we're going to move into executive session for about an hour and then start public comment in the Pledge of Allegiance at 7 p.m. We're going to do an executive session under exemptions 3 and 6. The first exemption being to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation of the public body and the chair so declares. The board will discuss the navigation bylaw and the chair so declares. Under exemption 3, exemption 6 is to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body. The board will discuss a potential property acquisition and the chair so declares the exemption under number 6. I will entertain a motion to enter into executive session.
Motion to enter into executive session.
Second. Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays. All right, we're going to enter into executive session and we'll be back at 7. Thank you.
You guys are having too much fun.
Sorry.
Okay, we are,
Your car.
all right. We are exiting executive session and we are reconvening the select board meeting. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance because we did not do that earlier.
No.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Okay, 7, well, we're a few minutes behind schedule, so is there any public comment? Oh, Mr. Dick.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm Mike Dick, 27 Parker Avenue, Cohasset. I really felt a need to come tonight and make some public comment. I will be brief. I would like to speak about what the town has as a long-range financial planning committee. I've been watching with interest on the deliberations of this board over the last several weeks, if not months. And there may be misconceptions that I wanted to address tonight. The long-range financial planning committee started many years ago and had a good run. About a year ago plus, several of us on capital budget and on advisory, recognizing the pressures that would come to bear on our town's ability to fund multiple, and I'll use the word competing projects, high-cost projects, felt that we needed to pull together a group of people that could, one, list out all the projects, which we rapidly did, but two, come up with a scheme, come up with a method that would allow us to evaluate projects and perhaps assign values, help the town prioritize. That was what we started to work on as a working group. A little further down the road, that working group morphed into a committee with a charge. And the committee had quite a few members in the interest of having all stakeholders present. But I feel that that turn got us off our track. And that's why I'm here tonight. I just want to remind the board that there is a group of citizens who are very interested in guiding the town through this process of evaluating all of these projects in a way that hopefully everyone can buy into, that if all hands buy into our method for ranking. Certainly, we can go much further into hearings and all that stuff, but the idea was, let's come up with a method, let's come up with a process that everybody buys into, so that when it does come time to make those decisions, it's a citizens group that's really making that choice versus, and all due respect, versus our financial director who was hired by the town. The analogy I think of, it would be like asking our harbor master, Lori Gibbons, to make major decisions on the harbor as the harbor master. What we are doing, rightfully so, is having a group of interested people, all with interests around the harbor, helping to shape that. And so I ask that approach be considered as, and I know tonight you're going to reconstitute and reorganize that group. But I just wanted to say that the working group, which morphed into the actual committee with a charge, did an awful lot of work, went far beyond just listing out the different projects. We were actually starting to get into how to manage all of these interests. Then one other personal thing I want to say. At our last town meeting, there was a large group of people who weighed in on the town hall project. And while I can't prove anything or state anything, but I think the common wisdom was that it was one group with a particular interest in a large capital project, which was not town hall. Not to, definitely mincing words here. I think our interest is not to start down a road where we've got one group that's ready, willing, and able to shoot down another group. We've got to set up a structure that is inclusive and open and willing to weigh the different benefits, the different cost benefits across multiple citizens of the town. So that's my thing, and good luck. Good luck with that, man. All right.
All right.
Take care.
All right. The bond anticipation note. Oh, okay.
Good evening.
Hello, Ms. Mullen.
I'm back again. I mentioned that last time I was here. We had two more notes we needed to issue short-term borrowing for, and it's in the memo that was sent to the board with the packet. One of them, I printed out the wrong one, but I'm sorry, I got distracted. So $300,000 for the GAC filtration plant project. I guess they were finishing up design. They just started expending in November, so it's very recent. And then filling up the Lily Pond expansion. So we need to borrow for those for the end of the fiscal year, so we don't have a deficit. But like I said at the last meeting, moving forward, we're going to be much more proactive, so our borrowings will probably take place in January and not June.
So do you need from us a vote to authorize both of these borrowings?
Yes, and you can just, I know last time you read this lengthy
Yeah,
two-page into the
yeah.
record. All you really need to do is just make a motion to, accept these two borrowings per the memo, and then we'll put the wording into the minutes, which will be fine.
Okay.
As long as you have a
Would anyone like
vote.
to make that motion?
I move that, sorry.
I'll second Ellen's motion.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I move that we authorize borrowing the remaining $300,000 along with the additional $300,000 for the GAC filtration plant project.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, thank you very much.
Linda will put the paperwork.
Okay. Oh, great, thank you.
And it might look a little different than last time because it's a State House note, just so everybody knows.
Okay, okay. Why don't we quickly move to licenses, permits, and events? So the first one is for Split Rock Social. They are requesting to open on Tuesday, the 4th of July, from noon until 9 PM.
We have Mr. Hilton.
Okay. Mr. Hilton, is there anything you want to say about that?
No, nothing specific outside of the kind of outline of the request. We, when we got our liquor license approval initially, the plan was to always be open on the Monday of any holiday weekend. This week is a little bit of an anomaly. I think it's going to only happen another one more time in the next 15 years that 4th of July actually falls on a Tuesday. So we were hoping to be open on Monday and Tuesday of that week, since most people will be off of work and looking for a place to go during the day. So just looking to get approval for that additional day.
Okay, is there any discussion among the board? Any discussion in the audience? Nope. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the Split Rock Social request to open on Tuesday, July 4th, 2023, 12 to 9 PM.
Any seconds?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay. Thank you. Happy 4th of July.
Thank you very much. All right.
Next item is the transient vendor license for Zach's Ice Cream. Ahmed, and I apologize, I do not know how to pronounce his last name. Is there anyone here prepared? Okay. Okay. Is this for an ice cream truck? Okay. No request for the music on the ice cream truck? It's been an issue.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. A silent ice cream truck. Would anyone like to? Yeah.
One question, would this preclude approving any other ice cream trucks or Dell's Ice Cream or?
We approved Dell's earlier. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve Zach's ice cream truck?
I'll make a motion to approve Zach's Ice Cream.
Any second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. All right, moving on to the Cohasset Kids Triathlon. With the date of July 29th, 2023. Is there anyone here from the Cohasset Kids Triathlon?
We've got Bill Burnett, who's popping
Okay.
up right now, and we have Chief Quigley, who's popping up right now as well.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Burnett and Chief Quigley. Is there anything that you would like to say? Mr. Quigley, I'll start with you about the Cohasset Kids Triathlon.
This is an event that we've had before, probably at least 5 times. There's a little bit of a hiatus during COVID. It's back. It's a very contained event on Sawyer Street. We have a good traffic plan. I don't anticipate any type of problems. I've checked with the rest of the committee. Chief Doc Ray doesn't impact Board of Health or DPW. A little bit of impact on the schools using their driveway, but everything seems okay and no issue. If Bill wants to say anything.
No, thank you, Chief. This event really is a labor of love. I've had many requests. It's just a great way of getting kids involved in something active. It's for kids ages as young as 6 to 10 years of age. It's going to support the Cohasset Swim Center. So I just think it's an option. It's an opportunity just to get the kids involved, do something fun. So that's why I put it on.
It sounds like a great event. Is there any discussion among the select board about the triathlon? Okay, any comment from the public? Nothing online, Justin? Nope. Okay. And it's July 29th. Is that right, Mr. Burnett?
That's right. That's right. We're asking for July 29th, the morning of, is the plan, correct?
Okay. Unless anyone wants to discuss anything, I'd entertain a motion.
I'd make a motion to approve the Cohasset Kids Triathlon, July 29th, 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Burnett,
Thank
and
you.
good luck.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. All right, Old Salt House, request of use for temporary kitchen. Is there anyone here from the Old Salt House?
We do. We got a gentleman who's not.
I'm also here.
Oh.
Anybody has questions?
Oh, okay. Hi, Mr. Lubitz. Okay. So the board has in our packet a letter from Attorney Quilty about the Old Salt House. Is Attorney Quilty going to be promoted or?
I do not see the attorney.
Oh, okay. 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 Chris, is there anything that you want to explain to the board? Does the board have questions about what's happening here? Need any background? And Mr. Lubitz is here to provide some background too. Oh, sorry.
The Old Salt House, because of renovation work that's being done in the shared space with the Old Atlantica, is putting in a temporary kitchen, which has met Board of Health approval and Building Department approval, pending the final renovations to that facility. And after back and forth with Attorney Lampkin, our special counsel, and everything seems to be fine. Again, it's passed our inspections, and this will allow them to open, and it complies with this just updates their licensed premises formally so they can comply with their alcohol.
And just so the board knows, we did reach out to our attorney, Attorney Lampke, and from his perspective, he said that this was a reasonable solution to the situation and need for a kitchen, and the final decision is up to us, but he provided some language that I'm happy to provide if someone wants to move to allow the request.
I just have a question. How long do they plan on using the temporary kitchen?
I think until the new one's available, and until the new one's complete. And I think it's supposed to happen in sometime by the end of the season, between now and the end of the season. I think some of it depends on construction schedule. I don't know if Ted has
Yeah, I
some
mean,
more
our
update.
hope is probably October. And again, this is a temporary measure to get open. This is not ideal for anybody, but it will allow us to serve the public.
Okay. And for the record, that's Mr. Lubitz speaking from the audience. Just so those, I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have two quick questions, two kind of stupid questions. Is the temporary kitchen outside? Because it said patrons of the restaurant can't go up to the kitchen. So I was like, is it inside or is it outside? I was confused.
Sir, would you mind just coming up to the
Yeah,
mic?
absolutely.
Thank you. Just so folks know.
Yeah, sorry. Ted Lubitz, Quest Hospitality Partners. So the temporary kitchen is in a mobile trailer.
Okay. Okay, and then is the menu going to be impacted? Is it going to be modified or?
It will be modified. It's going to be lobster roll, fish and chips, fish sandwich, burgers, hot dogs,
Okay.
that type of like Salt House fare.
Okay,
But it's not going to be as robust as it traditionally is.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Grady, did I hear you want to make
I
a
move
motion?
to approve the request of Atlantica Operating LLC, doing business as Old Salt House, to utilize the kitchen trailer on the premises while renovations of the regular kitchen are being undertaken, or until further notice of the select board, subject to all necessary inspections.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right.
Thank you for the accommodation. We really do appreciate it. We hope to see you down there soon.
When's the opening?
Opening tomorrow at Old Salt.
So our clam rolls will be waiting, right?
They're prepping them now.
All right, so now we are on to a July 2nd fireworks / overtime request. Mr. McClellan, mind approaching?
Evening, everyone. My name is Craig McClellan. I reside at 8 Rustic Drive. I'm really here in support of Chief Quigley's. This is an overtime request for police and fire. I don't know if Chief Dockery is going to be here, but I'm sure Chief Quigley will be able to enlighten you more than I can about police overtime. I can add some color or commentary.
Yeah, just some background on all the work you've done to help the town.
Sure. So since the fall, well, throughout the pandemic, there were some non-town fireworks that were displayed at Rocky Beach. It's clear, it started, in the beginning of that, and then for 3 years, there's like, a few hundred people there last year. It's clear there's a need. And so or at least a desire, may not, right? So starting last fall, I started to engage various members of the town, employees of the town, stakeholders of various agencies. In discussion, seemed like there was an interest in it. It wasn't till fairly recently that those efforts started to manifest themselves in the form of sort of formal meetings. And we, of note is that the town of Cohasset had a $25,000 credit with one of the leading pyrotechnic vendors named Atlas from the 250th celebration that never happened because of the pandemic. So this was sort of a good way to use that credit. Unfortunately, that was not a 4th of July display, and 4th of July displays, you can imagine, supply and demand are a little bit different in terms of price. Though I think that we're exploring whether or not that price can fluctuate a little bit. But right now we're looking at a $45,000 cost of the display plus cost of police and fire overtime, which yields a total of about $70,000. Again, our credit is $25,000. That's already spent. So police and fire, and again, Chief Quigley can speak to this, came in with the estimates of about $16,000 for police and about $5,000 for fire for overtime, $21,000 total of that $70,000 total figure, again, approximate. Sounds high, but, and as Chief Quigley can tell you, it's because we have to engage other towns and like Marine units, things like that. It's a fairly significant undertaking from a public safety perspective, obviously. But the good news is that because we had done something like this at Sandy Beach not too long ago, there is a plan for, crowd management, traffic management, all of that in place. Command center, where the barge would be, the safe zone, all of that, it's all done. The planning's all done. Some of the money is there. We're looking to be able to dig into the overtime budget for what I would characterize as a very appropriate expenditure of those funds, as it's town use of town police and fire departments. And then there's the issue of the delta between the credit we have and the cost of the show, which again is leaving us about a $20,000 deficit. That would be some private fundraising efforts. Again, we're looking to maybe reduce that delta a little bit, but I've been engaged with a few different entities or individuals throughout town, discussing some fundraising options. I'm confident we can do that if that's the only barrier. And again, most of the planning work has been done. So, however, I highly doubt that we'd be able to come up with like $41,000 in this amount of time. So that's why we're looking to have the police and fire be able to access the overtime budget. And certainly defer to Chief Quigley if there's anything I missed or that you can provide.
And just to clarify, we're talking about fireworks, big fireworks display July 2nd at Sandy Beach for everyone.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes. So it wouldn't be on the 4th of July, it'd be on the Sunday, July 2nd. Because there's just obviously scheduling with the vendor, and this is when they had an availability. We thought it'd be a good time because probably not many people working on the 3rd, where the 4th is going to be a Tuesday. So a lot of people have the following day off, Sandy Beach. Again, traffic and crowd control has already been planned out. So it'd be a really fun time.
Chief Quigley, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, well, the price is already dropping. Could be about $10,000 for the police overtime. I think the numbers might have get mashed together, but I'm not exactly sure on fire. I know it's less, but police is anywhere from $9,000 to $10,000 for the day.
Are there any questions on the board, from the board? All right, Chris.
The board also has to give a conditional approval for the event because of the permits that have to be issued through, we're prepared to work on, or working on those tentatively.
Okay, okay,
Again, conditional on Mr. McCullough's team raising the remaining funds.
okay. Is it,
So moved. If I could
What's
ask
the
one
motion?
question
Yeah.
about the event. How would parking be managed?
So we have a standing plan in place. When Sandy Beach had their fireworks display back, I believe it was 2017 or 18. We're using that plan, and there's off-site parking because we really have to walk down Atlantic Ave, Nichols Road. So usually would depend on Craig and his team to secure parking, either the music circus or somewhere off-site, one of the churches, T-lot, and bus people in.
Okay.
And the thought may be, I mean, we'll have to tweak this, but, you know, because that may be an extra cost that we may not be able to cover this year for sort of a first year. And I have to discuss this more with Chief Quigley and all the other stakeholders involved, but it may make sense to just simply have people walk to the venue, close the streets, you know, and people maybe have to like park at their friends' houses that are within, you know, walking distance or something like that. But, you know, that's not, the traffic and the crowd control has been worked out. The actual parking plan, you know, we haven't figured that out entirely, what would be best for this particular event, given the time frame that we're working with and the budget, because buses would cost money.
Yeah, okay.
So would we be able to restrict non-resident beach sticker holders from attending?
No, it's a public event. I mean, we'd definitely have to restrict traffic because what we experienced with the Sandy Beach display was, you know, the streets were really, you know, packed with people, just watching from along Jerusalem Road, along Atlantic Ave. So we had to close that down realistically. And, you know, people walk, it's, you know, generally a nice night and they're carrying, you know, coolers and beach chairs and things like that. So, you know, they'll definitely be out of town people. And that's what we prepare for, quite frankly. We can get a lot of people. So that's why we need the, you know, security points and traffic choke points in place. So a car can't penetrate that. And, you know, we just want to avoid a pedestrian accident.
Right, because I think I remember during the pandemic, we did restrict Hingham residents from using the beach on certain days and certain times, you know, because they had a sticker.
Well, there probably, you know, realistically, there'd be no parking, be very limited parking for people in the beach, because that's going to be, you know, used by, you know, the vendor, you know, the fireworks vendor, the fire department, and just the logistics of the show.
Another issue for this year is that it's going to be a rising tide, probably the worst tide for this, maybe by a couple hours, it's not the worst,
Yeah.
but so we may even want to utilize the parking lot for a viewing area as well. So it just makes sense, I think, probably not to have any parking. So people that are at the beach earlier, they'll have to know that they'll have to leave by a certain time because the fireworks show will be setting up. And we'll advertise it, we'll message it.
Sure.
And I can share the plan with the board. I can send that out tonight, just so you have an idea and you can see the maps and things like that. It's you know, it's a comprehensive plan that we used before, and it worked very well.
okay, one last question, Mr. Grady?
No, it's all right.
Do you-
I'm good.
No? Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the overtime and the event conditioned on any outstanding permits and the fundraising for the remainder of the fireworks?
I would make that motion to approve the July 2nd fireworks and the overtime request from the police and fire and the permitting contingent on fundraising,
For the fireworks, not the overtime.
not the overtime.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. McClellan,
Thank
for
you.
all your efforts.
Nice
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.
Great. Ms. Dolman, sir. All right, so this next agenda item is about the Cohasset Historical.
That's correct. I'm the chairman of the Cohasset Historical Commission. And And we've been talking lately about establishing either a new historic district or extending the only existing one, which is the Cohasset Common Historic District. And our thinking now is that the village center would be a very good place to either have a new one, it could be an entirely new one because it would have a name, and you have the Cohasset Common Historic District, and then you would have the Cohasset Center Historic District. The reason to have a new district is to ensure that the historical aspects and the architectural aspects of the village are preserved, because it's a very old part of the town. It was a locus of very early settlement. There's even a house that's a little bit south of the downtown area that was built in 1695. And there are several older buildings right in the village. So we want to make sure that as time goes on and new people come in who might not appreciate the value of these historical buildings, that there are no deleterious changes made. A historic district doesn't forbid changes. It just ensures that the changes that are made, like an addition, are appropriate and compatible with the existing style of the building. So we're just in the very early stages. And we hope to have your support. We really wouldn't want to go ahead without the support of the town boards. But I believe that many of you support this idea.
I think we can open up for discussion, but one thing we can consider as we move into our select board goal setting session next week is whether we want to consider the historic district and all that comes with it, along with the zoning goals, as we think about sort of the general sort of upkeep of the Cohasset. In terms of logistics with respect to moving forward with the district, would you mind talking a little bit about that? Because I know we looked at the law and thought that our existing Cohasset Common Historic Commission would be the body in charge.
That's right. The first step is to appoint a historic district study committee. And by law, there is the Cohasset Common Historic District Commission, and they are the study committee. However, I think they only have 4, probably 5 now with Lynn DiGiacomo. They can have as many as 7 members and 2 alternates. And I think it would be very desirable to expand that. Perhaps they do have one architect. It would be good to have another one, or perhaps as an alternate. You could have maybe an alternate historical society member, a planning board member, and perhaps a realtor who covers that area. So and it would be up to the select board to make those appointments.
Are there any questions from the board?
So I don't know if it would be part of the study or not, but is there a definition of where the village center starts and ends?
Well, that's up to the study committee. They'll define the district. And in fact, one of the things they have to do is to create a map of the district and identify the buildings in there. And not all the buildings will be historical, but all the buildings will be subject to the review of the Historic District Commission, just to make sure that any changes are in keeping with the character of that neighborhood.
Mr. Clark, did you have something you want to say? Well, I would just say, I think it's a great idea. I grew up in Hingham's Historic District, and as someone who did a lot of manual labor for my parents as a child, I definitely appreciated I was in a historic district, both in terms of the sort of labor of love it was to keep my family home, which was built in 1690, you know, up to the historic standards, and I think it made that area very nice. I also have heard from citizens, including one who came up to me yesterday or a few days ago, who's an architect in town, saying, you know, we would really benefit from something like what Hingham has in terms of, it's a design review board. And Chris, I think that you probably saw this on the planning board, that when you had projects down in the village, people really did want that sort of design that was compatible with like the historic vibe in the village. And so we thought that might be a good place to start with.
I think it'd be an excellent place. I mean, there are some very important buildings. There's the Independence Building, which was an early fire station and police station. There's the Masonic Building on Brook Street.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. Anyway, there are several, and I don't think people really appreciate the significance of many of the buildings there, both architecturally and historically. So it would be educational. I think it would help people appreciate what kind of a town they live in. And it would also, I think, enhance the values, the real estate values downtown, to have it a really attractive historic area. So it would benefit the property owners and the merchants down there. And I think it would be a logical extension of the common, even though it might be a separate entity. Rather, I would personally, I think I would prefer to have it separate, because you could also expand that later on. If you call it the center, that could encompass a much larger area.
Thank you. This is a very good project. I'm wholeheartedly in support of it. And I think the town owes you and your other people on the commission a big debt of gratitude.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah. Well, we look forward. This will be an exciting project.
Great. Oh, sorry, Paul.
That's all right. Thank you very much, sir.
You're very welcome.
No, I think it's long overdue. It really is. There's a lot of great homes in Cohasset, and it'll be nice someday. I've always envisioned somewhat of a walking tour, maybe, because, you know, before we lose them. So
exactly, and that is happening little by little, and you don't want to have our history, our heritage eroded.
So I would suggest, if the board is amenable, we can consider this next week, perhaps as a part of our select board goal planning, and to try to figure out what specifically we need to do, maybe fill some appointments on the commission and ask them, including in the context of filling those appointments, if they're ready, willing, and able to take this on.
Right.
Go from there and, you know, work with us.
Happy to give you any input you want.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So our next agenda item, and apologies to the zoning bylaw group, we're running a little bit behind schedule. Our zoning bylaws, please join us.
Good evening.
Go.
You know, just following up what Jackie said, you know, we do have design guidelines for the harbor and the village, and there's been a lot of public sentiment about extending that to 3A. And my thought, and I'm going to bring this up to the planning board probably tomorrow, since we have nothing else to do, is start working on turning those from guidelines to regulations to give them a little more oomph, and start the process of extending it to 3A. So we do have things in place that were done in 2018, I think they've done. So.
Okay. So would you mind identifying yourself for the viewers, just because you're sort of behind?
Oh, okay. Tom Callahan from the Zoning Bylaw Committee.
David Farad from the Zoning Bylaw Committee.
Welcome. So would you like to start, Tom, with your?
Yeah, I sent you a memo sort of kind of outlining a number of things that we need to talk about as we get into the next steps. The first thing is having a full board of 7 members. Even when we met last night at the beginning, until Dave showed up a little later, we were kind of worried about a quorum. We have 5. We have Dave is our citizen member, Cassie is sort of citizen member, master plan implementation committee rep, Mark and I from the planning board, and then Jack from this board. I exchanged an email with Woody Chittick tonight to try to get zoning by ZBA back into it. He said he would bring it up at their meeting tonight. They had been on the working group. Woody was a great participant. I keep pushing to have them have somebody participate, but then, we basically need the citizens at large, or do you have 2 people from your committee? Knock yourselves out, but we really need 7, because especially as we go through the summer with the workload we have, can't worry about a quorum. And, last night we almost did not have one.
So you need 2 more members.
2, yeah.
Okay.
No, preferably zoning bylaw and zoning board of appeals, and whoever.
Okay. All right.
So that's one thing. And then the second thing about a couple of policy directions that we need. Judge Cutler and I spoke about this before town meeting, that, again, thank you for your support in the spring, but that most of that was housekeeping. As we start to get into the more meatier things, we need to, not just come up with stuff on our own and then show up in October right at the town meeting and say, oh, here's our ideas. So we need some policy direction. And the first one is on housing choice. So I've summarized where I understand we are with the ever-changing regulations. And, in my view, that is still the state is approaching this as a one-size-fits-all. But, David gave us some numbers last night of what they now think is the shortfall of affordable housing in this state. The judge pointed out how the AG's office is being extremely aggressive about this, and towns who are resisting are going to have the hammer come down on them. That was confirmed to me by another town council whose town was thinking about fighting them. And
when you say the hammer, are we talking about losing access to state grants?
that's, I think, their main leverage that they have at the moment. So the question though, we have to zone for, we do not have to build 638 units over 43 acres, and that's 15 units an acre. So it's much denser than anything we allow in town right now. And the issue is, do we do the bare minimum and try to skate under that, or do we actually do zoning in an area where there might be some development? I have received one email about suggesting we use 2 properties near the station that are developed, near the Cohasset station, that are developed, would meet the 43 acres, but as a practical matter, are they ever going to be torn down and redeveloped? No. So the question is, would the state accept that? Would the state say, well, that's technical compliance, but not actual compliance? We still have 40B out there as an alternative for developers. So I can tell you that I was approached had a meeting as chair of the planning board with a developer and their council about a proposal on the south side of town, going towards Situate. We can do a district in proximity to the North Situate station, not only just our station. And
where exactly would that North Situate district be? Is it south of Shaw's?
Yes. And I've heard from 2 people, one wanting to do a 60-unit proposal and one wanting to do, this one was for 133 units. So there's people out there ready to go and do these things, giving them the green light. When I was at a seminar a couple of months ago out in Worcester, of all state planning board officials, someone from the Situate Planning Board told me there's also a proposal on their side of the town line in proximity to North Situate Station. So, ironically, the state is going to start this fall with the rebuild of 3A, that stretch of 3A. I think they're pretty much done. And all of a sudden, there's going to be these proposals of adding a lot more traffic burden to that stretch of 3A. So that might be an impediment to these developments. But there's people talking that, the town's in play. There's interest in coming here and building something here. And the question is, what do we do about that? So do we concentrate on just our station? Do we split it up? Or do we concentrate on the south side of town where, towards North Situate Station, where there's more undeveloped land and it's much more feasible land would be redeveloped, torn down than some of the sites closer to the Cohasset Station? And what should we do? Because, the state statute is 3 paragraphs. A bylaw wouldn't be difficult to do, but it's a question of how we zone for it. And the thinking is we would create an overlay district superimposed on top of the commercial district on 3A. And we have to allow it as of right. We can't even require mixed use. We can encourage mixed use, but we can't require it. So we are, though, the thinking of the committee at the moment is to restrict this kind of development to 3A.
Did they take into account the ancillary effects on these proposed developments? The effects on traffic, the effects on schools, the effects on, everything that the town's gonna have to bear?
I don't think they thought of that. I saw an article today about how Newton's fighting, Newton's gonna have to face 800 some odd units, I think. Middleborough is the one that's fighting it and apparently getting really pressured from the AG's office. No, they're not thinking of that. And I will tell you, the one thing I added to the memo this morning was we are considering putting in an impact mitigation fee provision into the bylaw. Some of our neighboring towns have, and David was looking at Hanover's today. We think Situate has, we know Franklin has, and we're going to look. So we can do that. We can put in our inclusionary zoning into this district, but there's a lot of, the impact on schools, even the impact and mitigation fees can go to things like traffic, parking, sidewalks, and funds for those things. But we can't do anything under any state zoning law to impact, the impact in schools and school population where the big costs start coming. And the answer is no. Right now, they're not thinking of any of that because they say we need the housing, and they're going to see that this goes.
Who would the impact mitigation fee be charged to?
Developers. And apparently on that score, David was found that he can tell that Hanover has all kinds of little funds.
Just briefly on this one, because I think that is the concern of when you get a project, what is the impact beyond the borders of that property? And with mitigation fees, we don't have anything codified in the current bylaw as far as where and what mitigation fees could go to. So potentially, in looking at the other towns, and again, you've got other towns like Hanover, which has Route 53, Norwell, you can even look at Dedham, which has Providence Highway, much more robust bylaw regarding mitigation because they're dealing with it on an ongoing basis. Their planning board has got a list of projects every meeting that are coming up because of that. But nevertheless, we could take something and distill it and cohasitize it so that there would be something there codified for mitigation from the developer. And again, this would be for off-site, not the on-site would still be dealt with, but this would be for off-site. And if those funds were not expended for off-site, if it didn't need, because some places need more things than others. Some places have sidewalks and some places don't. The rest of those funds could be directed to another fund, such as the new sidewalk committee or the DPW or fire and police. And those things can be designated within that bylaw. So if those funds are not expended, the residual of that can go to those. And that might be a good way with some of the things, some of the new committees that you created, especially the sidewalk one, where you're looking for funding, it could be there. Now, I would caution that in Cohasset, we do not have a tremendous amount of commercial development, so it's not necessarily going to be a windfall that there's going to be, money just flowing in there every year. But when there is a project, I think there's a reasonable expectation that you're going to be looking at not only construction, but also reconstruction of sites. I think we need to be looking at 3A and our little commercial places that we have in town, that you're going to have people looking at multiple areas, putting them together and getting something bigger there over time. And that it's not just going to be a little, one shop or something like that. I think we're going to be looking at reconstruction as the years go on, for the next 10 or 20 years, because most of it is developed at this point.
And one of the questions for that is, will DHCD let us impose an impact and mitigation fee to the Housing Choice District? That's not clear because I don't think the subject's been raised.
Yeah, I might add, many of you know I was used to be very active in Boston. And if you did any project in Boston, there would be a calculation of the impact on the community. In order to make up for that, you would have to mitigate it, hence it's called mitigation fees. And unless we have a framework to put those mitigation fees, we can't do that. So this is one of the important things that the bylaw committee has been working on, just to get that enabling mitigation.
Well, maybe,
So getting back to housing choice, I mean, you guys are the chief executives of the town. We kind of need a direction. We do have an extension now that the bylaw is not due till December 24. But we are working on Article 4, Article 5, where all of this would go. We just need some direction of where to go. Writing, we've applied for a grant to get some outside expertise, but frankly, writing the bylaw, finding the boundaries of the district by property would not be difficult. Listing the uses, it wouldn't be super difficult to do, but we just need to know how much we should do.
and with the how much, what we're really talking about is whether just Cohasset Station or add in North Situate as well.
Personally, I would split it up. And again, I think if you're in the direction of wanting to encourage some of this development, it's easier in the south part of town because the nature of the properties, there's more open, undeveloped properties, and then there's some that could more easily be redeveloped. And for example, you're not going to redevelop Avalon, you're not going to redevelop the TOD district, you're not going to redevelop the landfill, it's.
And you're not sure yet whether a technical potential compliance will actually serve as actual compliance. So if we said, oh, let's just do Avalon, but realistically it's there, no one's going to like redevelop it.
Right. And Avalon right now is dense, is not that dense. So, even if they let us count the units that were there, which is not clear either, it's nowhere near the density that they're looking for.
Jack, how do you feel about this?
Oh, I think we definitely need to do that. And I think this committee needs to have the flexibility to place it. It's a big challenge to find areas that are consistent with the character of Cohasset that we can fit something like this. So it might be a little here, it might be a little there, but I think it's an important part of what the zoning bylaw committee is doing is to figure out where that works.
Chris, what do you think?
First, I agree with Jack. I like the idea of the impact mitigation fee. I also like the fact that it wouldn't be just Cohasset going forward with that idea. It sounds like that's already in place in several neighboring towns. We would just be doing something that's already been established by some level of precedent, even if it's not specifically for this. Minimum compliance is still a bit of a hurdle. So I'm not concerned with coming into minimum compliance and then seeking that would be sufficient. And then the last thing I'll mention is that we've talked on the planning board about whether or not doing this right would involve other investments, sidewalks, crosswalks, looking at traffic lights. I would caution us against going too far to accommodate this type of development because we wouldn't make those types of accommodations for other types of development in town.
That's why we have to get clarity from DHCD about what their position is with regard to mitigation fees being imposed on these districts. And by minimal compliance, I'm really talking about area because it's ultimately the area. And 43 acres is the minimum requirement, but it's got to be 43 developable acres. We have lots of wetlands, we have other things, we have sewage issues. As far as traffic lights go, if we're concentrating this all in 3A, people are going to have to go to the state to get okays for that. We could perhaps mandate it, but the sense you get from all these regulations is towns do not put up too many roadblocks to this happening. You need to do this in some form. And so
I agree with not putting up roadblocks, but at the same time, on the metaphor, I wouldn't pave the road either.
No, but I'm concerned that if we said, we picked the two properties near the Cohasset train station that would meet the 43 acres that have no reasonable likelihood of ever being redeveloped, I wouldn't be surprised if the state told us, not good enough.
But there's really nowhere in Cohasset that would be perfect for this type of development. So
The southern stretch of 3A would be more perfect, but it has, you know, the sewer line between the towns isn't coming anytime soon. You know, it's not taking away other impediments that developers need to face, sewage compliant, you know, getting a curb cut on 3A, all that. They're still going to have to do all that stuff, but, you know, it's not like we're going to put this district on North Main Street, you know, in a residential area. We really think it's best concentrated on 3A.
So at least at an initial pass, I like the 3A idea. I like the impact mitigation fee.
Anything?
Ditto. I have a really stupid, naive question. When the state passed this bylaw ordinance, did you say it was formulaic? So it has no bearing on the reality of finding 43 acres within a certain distance to either of the train stations in North District or in
Well,
Cohasset?
they first said half mile, and now they say, you know, a certain percentage has to be within a half mile. If we split it up into 2 districts, there has to be at least 50% of it in one of those districts. So towns that have multiple stations and do 3 districts, 4 districts, they just have to make sure one of them's fairly large. We would split it up probably equally, but no, they didn't. And originally, the first cut of the regulations was that Cohasset would have to develop 750 units. You know, and so their threshold is 15% of your housing stock, but however it works out for us, it's actually 19% of our housing stock, and that's a big hit if it all got developed at the same, you know, in a reasonably short period of time. So, you know, we want to zone for properties that might be difficult, so it's not encouraging the whole 683 to come in, you know, within a 5-year period or something, but, you know, I think if we, my own personal view is if we simply zone where it'll never happen, they'll see through that. But right now it is a one-size-fits-all. They've kind of adjusted. There's a chart of every town, but still 638 for a town our size is insane.
Well, I'm in favor of mitigation fees. I don't think they cover the effects of what development, any one of these proposals would do. To the town, to 3A, to traffic, to schools. I just don't. Well, I mean, if I had to pick one, it would be the North Situate acreage. And I have to say, I'm in favor of, you know, doing the bare minimum compliance or zoning up in that area because, again, mitigation fees are fantastic, but we just don't have the infrastructure or the road works to handle this kind of influx. Schools, we just don't have it. The town's not designed for it. That's where I lay with that.
But just to close the loop, I would be in favor of providing you with the flexibility to find the right parcels for real compliance. It would be a shame to spend 3 to 4 years of all of our time and cost only to be rejected at the end for what the state views as a non-starter. So I think we have to make a good faith effort.
Yeah, well, we'll identify some things, and then, you know, then the problem we will run into, inevitably, is somebody will say, well, you're spot zoning, why are you doing his property, not my property? You know, that's inevitably going to come too. Well, spot zoning is only a problem if somebody makes it a problem, but it's not exactly illegal per se. All right, I didn't expect instant answers, but you guys should all be thinking about what direction we want to go. We do have some time to do this. We don't have to rush this for the fall as we first thought, so.
You want to move to the harbor next, Tom?
Yeah, so the next thing on policy is about the harbor. So one of the things that's not on here, but is, you know, we have a whole mix of zoning down there. And one thought has been, since the working group for the last 2.5 years, is, you know, consolidating the zoning in the commercial districts, just one waterfront business or harbor district that would have the current uses. But a couple of other things that have come out is, height in the harbor, it's 35 feet all around town, but that height has to account for base flood elevation, unlike other parts of town. So the bottom measurement is already higher. That wasn't accounted for when the overlay district zoning was done. So that's one policy direction. Do we do something to change the 35-foot height limit to accommodate base flood elevation? Now, there's other parts of the, I mean, this may be the horse is already out of the barn, because there's other parts of the harbor where the base flood elevation is so high, nobody's going to develop it. And that's why Atlantic is not being torn down. They would have had to go up extraordinarily high if they started from scratch. I don't know what it is at the Lobster Pound site, but, you know, we got the first application on that the other night. So that was one thing. The other big issue down there is mixed use. I mean, the harbor historically has not had residential uses allowed in at least the waterfront business district. The overlay district allowed that to happen. There's still one property on the land side of Elm Street that is zoned that way. Question is, do we extend the ability for mixed use elsewhere throughout the whole harbor or take it out? Obviously, the hotel project is grandfathered. There's also been an inquiry that came to me from expanding the overlay district to some bordering residence C zone properties. Won't name names, but you can guess which there's two large waterfront properties that are in residence C. Residence C can have multifamily development within it, but mixed use require a commercial, well, in the overlay district, it requires a certain percentage of commercial, not the whole first floor. But the question is, do you want to go in that direction? Do you want to go in the direction of expanding mixed use throughout the harbor? We are putting together a poll, which was one of the things I was going to talk to at the end. And one of those polls is also going to ask people, are there any uses you'd want to see excluded in the harbor? Because the planning board last week, the rumors about the Lobster Pound were confirmed. They are looking toward the hotel, nowhere near developing it at this point. They have a number of challenges. They came before us to do a zoning freeze to basically beat whatever we do here. But, you know, and there was a sentiment, well, we don't have any more boat yards and repair yards. But the hotel use has been allowed in the waterfront business district for decades. That's how the other hotel was built. So, but are there any uses you wouldn't want to see? Right now, the thinking is if we create a single harbor commercial district, it would have all the existing uses that are allowed down there. Not, you know, not really change it, but that's another thought. So for you, it's, do we want to see expand mixed use, and should we do with something with the height going forward? In what would be a consolidated harbor commercial district? You know, again, don't have to answer as soon, but
Actually, yeah, just in the interest of time, and because it strikes me that we may be addressing some of this next week in our goal setting session, if we want to reaffirm the zoning goal and try to figure out priorities too, although, you know, we can certainly talk to it,
yeah,
including
it's
with.
just that we shouldn't be, that we as a committee shouldn't be just coming up with, like I said, and coming to you the last minute with some wild-eyed proposal.
Totally appreciate that, yeah.
So, you know, and then that goes part to one of my other comments is, you know, we know there's a lot of stakeholders. I've reached out to the Harbor Committee to try to meet with them on that topic. We've reached out to Alternative Energy and working with them about tweaking the solar and wind bylaws. We're going to have to speak to the Affordable Housing Committee at some point. And I just, you know, we just want to be able to do that. We're not asking any committee to write anything. It's just give us your ideas, give us your comments. It's the committee and the judge that's writing things about the bylaws. So,
Would you mind talking about special town meeting in 2023 as well? Just sort of like the lineup of potential.
yeah, so, okay, we'll get, so for beginning with last night's meeting, we are starting to work on Article 4, which is the article that deals with our uses. And one of the problems many people have recognized is we have this incredible laundry list of uses. And it has led to, you know, it mentions some things, not others, but the others are related. And it's led to people having to take extraordinary measures, like Crazy Paws is the example of getting to open for business. So the sentiment is to greatly simplify use article and the table into categories of uses. We're far from the highway. We got an ocean on one side. We want to have commercial development, but we're in a kind of beggars can't be choosers, and we need to be flexible with that. We brought back the use variance, which gives us flexibility. So that's the direction we're going, and the judge is working on her ideas. There were other ideas we started last night in our next meeting in June, we're going to work on it. Article 4 is our main focus. Article 4, though, brings on changes in definitions because we're going to be changing terminology by having these broader categories of uses. Article 5, which is the table of area dimensions, we probably won't get to any substantive change until the spring. But in the fall, we will need housekeeping things because the new terminology we bring into Article 4 requires changes to the terminology used in Article 5. Article 3 in the districts, we did housekeeping in the spring. What we probably will only bring forward is the consolidation of the harbor, and there's a proposal to consolidate all the 3A commercial districts into a single commercial district rather than the different ones we have that have never been developed as such. And if we are ready to go with housing choice with an overlay district, that would be for in Article 3. We will accessory dwelling units, Article 15. We would probably bring that forward. It may very well get wrapped into Article 4 as rather than a special use article off by itself, bring it all into the uses article. On parking, we just want to do a real quick study with one of our town consultants. And these are budget issues, but to just make sure that the table we have now that says you need so many spaces per type of use, commercial, mostly commercial use, are we up to the state of the art on that? And do we need to make any tweaks, especially since with commercial development in the village and harbor, we have parking problems. So you kind of see it outlined there. And then 19 and 20 of the solar and wind articles, we do have to make one change in solar to bring it into the table of uses that the judges told us. But whether there's any other tweaks, for example, we have lots of individual solar panels on houses, but it's actually not permitted in the bylaw. And the state is telling us you should have it there. We may need to expand where we can put the large arrays. We only have it limited right now to one property in town. On the wind, we may tweak some things to encourage wind development, but small scale wind development, not the large scale stuff. So those will probably be ready. It's a lot of work for us to take on again with the summer vacations. That's why we need 7 members to make sure we get this all done. We're operating on the assumption at the moment the town meeting would be early December. But, okay, well,
Somewhere.
all right, yeah, so it means we need to have things pretty much ready in September, and that's what the timeframe we're working on. The spring would deal with any substantive changes to Article 5, the dimensions. And there we would potentially need 2 studies done. One, if we want to tweak or change frontage areas, lot width, those kind of dimensions. Going back to the suburban type zoning we had until 1969, or staying with what we've had since, which has small frontages, encourages pork chop. We need to study that. We need an expert who would say, here's a given piece of property, where would you get more development? The zoning we have is going back to truly suburban type zoning. The other thing is we are looking at making some changes in how house size is calculated, about switching to a floor area ratio, which we employ in the village, but also employing that in residential all over town, actually. That is done in a number of the towns. That's a trend. We need help in determining what is the right number to set for that. So that will require studies, and those studies would need to start relatively soon so that we'd have all the data we need to present to the public, present to you, and be ready for the spring. The other big thing in the spring will be anything we do new on climate change or resiliency. And with that, Articles 9 and 14 are our watershed protection and flood bylaw that probably would need some changes. There is a joint effort going on. Concom wants to make changes. I've been to at least one meeting with Montana and Charlotte. So it all has to be coordinated, but a number of boards are looking to change their bylaws, and we just want to make sure it's all coordinated. But none of that new climate change material would be ready before the spring. And hopefully by the spring, we're done. And then we would talk about at the very, very tail end. Do we reorganize the bylaw like it has 22 articles now and condense them down?
So Tom, just to summarize, as to the substance for fall town meeting, you're looking at potential consolidation with the Harbor District.
Consolidation of 2 commercial districts. We're not looking at any we're not looking at the moment of any boundary changes of any district, but consolidating the 3A commercial districts and the Harbor commercial districts. We are looking at doing a major overhaul of Article 4 uses. From that comes changes to definitions, housekeeping changes for Article 5, and possible consolidation of Articles 15 and 18 into Article 4. 15 is accessory dwelling units, 18 is the village.
So there could be some changes around the village and ADU.
At least in consolidation, in ADUs, yes. The thinking right now is to expand the availability of the use of ADUs. Okay, so there'll probably be a substantive change there, but also the thinking is to make all the use-related articles in one place. So rather than have 15 and 18 sitting off by themselves. As far as the village itself goes, there's nothing been put on the table about changing anything about the village and its current dimensions and requirements, other than the idea of having some buffer zoning. Setbacks might be greater and the height limit might be lower within a certain amount where the village meets residential. That's been thought about. It hasn't been thought through. Nobody's thrown out numbers. Nobody's thrown out any concrete idea. We could do that, or that would probably come when we do the actual changes to the Article 5 table in the spring. We may play with it. So the other thing in the fall, we'll possibly deal with parking. We can deal with the impact bylaw. Housing choice depends on how far along we are having a consensus of where it goes. But we could.
Housing choice is something we absolutely have to get done in fall of 2024.
At the absolute latest, probably, no, well, better would be spring 24, because it'll take till the fall of 24 for the AG to approve. And we don't want to be told in September of 24, your bylaw doesn't work, and then have to change it a month later, have a month to change it. So we really should shoot for that for the spring, if not this one.
Questions?
Just following up on a couple of things that you mentioned, Tom. First, you mentioned that there's some interest in providing a transition from what is currently the village into residential areas. I know certainly a lot of my neighbors would be very interested in that, because there is development that is village right next to residential that doesn't seem to work well. So I'd be enthusiastic about that. Secondly, and I'll be brief, I apologize, on parking. There is some enthusiasm in other jurisdictions for the elimination of parking requirements for developers. I'll just chime in that I think that's a terrible idea, and I hope no one would propose that here, because I think where we are, we actually have relatively light parking requirements for developers, and as a result, we have a lot of parking for relatively new multifamily developments or condos that overflows into existing parking and challenges those already public spaces.
I mean, we're liberal with parking in the village when it says you can use the village parking lot if you're within 500 yards of it. But everybody should know, all the new projects in the village and in the harbor, both the Atlantica site and the hotel site, all have provided on-site parking. That's certainly for their for the residential use. Now at Atlantica, there's no residential use, and we have encouraged them to do their overflow and their employee parking at another site. But they've only signed a 1-year agreement for that. But everybody else in the village, the new thing at the gas station, One Pleasant Street, all of their residential components are on site. What's driving the parking problem in the village is the hospitality uses, the restaurants, of which they're thriving, and they are going to thrive. They are what's keeping Situate Harbor alive.
I would argue they're suffocating because they don't have enough parking.
Well, that
So
could
much
be,
of it
but
is getting taken up by.
so the zoning isn't going to necessarily solve that problem for, we're not going to start telling restaurants in the village, you have to have so many on-site spaces because it won't be possible.
It's a longer conversation, but the umbrella thought that I would like to share is that we could sure use some more parking, and part of that solution could be making sure that when someone puts up a large building, commercial or residential, that their obligation to provide parking there, as opposed to relying on existing public spaces, is robust.
Right, and then that is, from the planning board of what we permitted in the last 2 years, that it has been happening, so.
Well, in other words, just a piggyback on Chris. So for instance, we have James Lane. They're parking over the town lot across the street. Commercial contractors are parking there, boats, things like that.
Mhm.
Say they're using those lots, including the town lot, the main town lot, as an overflow. And, I can see people walking every day from the town lot to their houses. So,
We almost maybe want to encourage it, like, we don't have any regulations about employee parking. Now, we got an agreement from the owner of Atlantica, with the redevelopment of that, to put employee parking somewhere else, but, maybe we mandate that part, employee parking, and I don't know if that's a bylaw issue or executive authority, you guys issue of having parking regulations, but, and enforcing that if it's being used for use of parking a boat, that's an enforcement issue, falls on you and the police department to write people tickets, but needing more spaces, there is land in the village that could be added, but it's ledge, it's got its challenges, but there is space for more parking. It's a question, we're going to have to develop both spaces, more physical spaces, and we are going to have a bylaw that makes sure as much as can be done on site can be done on site. But we're not going to capture that for every use that's happening in the village and the harbor. We're not going to mandate parking for the restaurants. It's just going to be physically impossible for them to meet any kind of requirement.
There's room for improvement.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
And one of this plays right into the whole idea of mitigation. Somebody comes in with a project, whatever it is, residential, restaurants or whatever, they create a change in the environment. And mitigation means that if you cause an impact on the community at large, you have to mitigate it. And it can be providing parking. It can be providing athletic facilities or whatever, but that is definitely part, and we are very much aware on the community about parking and the impact.
I want Dave to jump in on what Hanover does about traffic and parking.
Yeah, without getting too nuanced and just keeping it at a 30,000-foot level, one of the things they do is that there's a charge for when you have a traffic study, the extra overflow of traffic that they create, they charge per car of what the difference of that is. And again, that can be put into off-site mitigation. So therefore, that extra overflow of traffic, you're mitigating for around the area around it. And so again, with Cohasset, it could either go into a sidewalk fund if you ever create a parking fund to look at parking in different areas. It could go to that, there's opportunities there. But as I said, some of these other towns have much more robust bylaws regarding it because they just see it every day. And they've had many projects through the years and they're able to do it.
So maybe without prejudging, what I think my fellow board members are saying is that there is interest with respect to the village and parking and the mitigation fund generally. I think that's a great idea. And that's something we can all discuss though too at the select board goal meeting. If, we want to provide more specific direction on how we want.
And when we write something, for example, in the village, we can show it to you.
I just want to make sure we're right on the right path regarding it so that we've got the right direction going.
And the last thing I wanted to mention, is public outreach. We expect to continue to do forums from time to time. This time, we're also going to take advantage of doing some surveys. And I shared today with Justin the drafts of 3 that are almost ready to go out. The Judge Cutler has given them the once over, but we are prepared to put out a survey about the public sentiment about ADUs, accessory dwelling, about the harbor, and about short-term rentals, which we do not regulate at all.
Are you talking about like Airbnb?
I'm talking about the state definition of short-term rentals is everything, commercial and private. We don't regulate it at all. I've seen a zillion ads in just the last 2 weeks on 143 about short-term rentals. But, you know, there are towns who are banning them. There are towns who are approving them. Nantucket just turned down a proposal to get rid of short-term rentals. Nantucket, as the judge pointed out to us, also charges a registration fee for short-term rentals. And apparently Nantucket makes a hell of a lot of money doing that because they have a lot of short-term rentals. So it's a topic that I'm sure is going to generate some controversy because people do rent out their houses, but it's something we think we can't just keep ignoring and we should address it. So, you know, right now the survey, the draft is like 8 questions and it's distinguishing between the commercial Airbnb type and then the private type. And, you know, again, just to get some direction for people where they want us to go or not go. And it's, you know, and then in the future, we may use other things. I don't think housing choice is something to put necessarily out to a public survey because the state's kind of telling us do this, or, you know, there's not really a lot of, not really a lot of choices in that, but those are going to be ready to go out within probably the next week. And we're going to adjust them.
Are there any other questions the board has? Okay.
So again, just announce, we need 2 members. Please express interest. Hopefully zoning will, ZBA will join us, but if not, we still need 2 members. It would really help to get somebody at our next meeting is June 28th. So we'd love to have 2 people in place by then.
Could I speak just to that briefly? If you're at home, briefly, I know it's hard, I'll try. Concerned about the character of Cohasset. One of the ways in which we shape our character is by zoning, which is what can be used. So it's a good opportunity. It's actually pretty interesting to see how it works. It's a good opportunity for somebody who's relatively new to the public process to join a committee and really participate. And it's one of those things where it really does make a difference.
It does. And just so people know, in full disclosure, between now and town meeting, it is a time commitment. We have been meeting twice a month. We would anticipate doing that through the summer, just because we essentially have a September deadline to have everything ready and written. So, you know, it is a commitment, but we do it by Zoom, occasionally live, but it's trying to make it easy for everybody.
Please join. You can ignore what he said. He just made.
No, but
Thank you, Tom and Dave,
Okay.
including
Thank
for
you.
all your work.
Thank you all.
Up to the.
thanks.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks, and congrats to you.
Thank you.
All right, 8:26. We are 4 minutes ahead of schedule as to committees and appointments, but unless anyone objects, I think we should proceed forward, maybe save a little time at the end of the meeting. So next up is Mr. Jason Earls for a School Facilities Committee appointment, or I should say reappointment. He's the existing chair. He had a 1-year term, and he is looking to be reappointed in part to help continue having meetings of the School Facilities Committee.
I move that we reappoint Jason Earls.
And I'm sorry,
It's a 3-year term,
to a 3-year term now, it would be.
because it was staggered initially.
Yeah, he's,
To a 3-year.
So did he was he initially appointed to the 1?
yes,
Okay.
he was appointed to the one initially.
1
Is
year.
that's correct, right, Tracy? He was appointed to the 1-year term? Okay, yeah. And he's done a great job, in my opinion. He's got a lot of great technical background, and he's run the meetings, and he's taken on a lot. And so Jack, you have a motion pending? Anyone want a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay.
I just have a quick question regarding the School Facilities
Yeah.
Committee. Are the other 2 entities, the moderator and the school committee, aware that they have reappointments that they need to do as
I
well?
believe they are aware. Yes,
Okay.
yes. And, you know, obviously we can't tell them how to do their
Yeah, yeah,
appointments or
yeah,
not,
yeah.
but I think we can get the ball rolling and then flag to them that,
Okay.
you know, we're trying to get the ball rolling and would respectfully ask them to do the same. So next up is the Long-Term Financial Planning Committee, or Cohasset Financial Planning Committee. And apologies to my fellow board members for not sending this earlier yesterday. I was not able to access our town email. So I presented a proposal to the board of trying to figure out a approach going forward that addresses some of what Mr. Dick was talking about, where we originally had a working group that was working pretty well until it became sort of a larger unwieldy committee and we had trouble getting quorums and going from there. I did talk with Mr. Senior and town staff about whether this was feasible on the timelines provided. And when I say this, I mean essentially having a smaller committee that I would recommend is comprised of the chairs of the select board, school, capital budget, and advisory committee to essentially try to get a report, an initial report out to the select board for you to review and consider. And then we can start having more public forums with everyone there. And the select board can help drive and direct those with the help of Mr. Senior. So that way we're really trying to put more of the work out there publicly in a more public forum as compared to sort of committee meetings. But to use the summer, fortunately or unfortunately, to try to get some of that work going on in the interim. So my first suggestion is that we direct Mr. Senior to work with the chairs of the select board, school, capital budget and advisory, who were the people who were faithfully participating in the group during the last year, as Mr. Dick indicated, over the course of that time period. And, we were making progress, but again, that committee structure was tricky because it was so large. And with a working group, you don't have the same constraints because we can just meet and do the work product and then bring it to the public meeting, if that makes sense. So that would be my first suggestion. And then the second one is, I think we can discuss what we are directing the group to do. If we want to have a longer discussion at the goals meeting, I want to put something out there for people to think about and look at. I appreciate you haven't had a lot of time though. We've got a lot of moving pieces in terms of the different financial issues happening. And so we can have a longer conversation there. But I do think we could handle it in sort of a, today we can talk about the working group and then maybe next meeting we can talk about the goals, or we can talk about all at once. I sort of defer to how people are feeling.
Do we need a longer meeting on that? I mean, we discussed some of this. I'm in favor of exactly what you proposed.
Okay. I know it's a lot though, so I want to give people time if you wanted more time.
Proposed in the memo or
Basically what we discussed earlier, but tightening up the group and with the chairs of the various committees, and getting the ball rolling. So you don't have such an unwieldy committee. And that's what happened in the last
right.
iteration. It's just
Yeah, I was just unclear on,
sorry about that.
no, that's okay. So, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So I would just say either the chair or the designee, because sometimes the chairs of committees are
busy,
wrapped up and busy with a lot of other things. So they could designate someone from their respective committee to be that person. I'm trying to recall where I read it recently regarding open meeting law and working groups. Was that vetted by council that a working group?
We did previously last August vet this concept with council. We can re-vet it if it would make you feel better, but unless it's directed by Mr. Senior, it has to be subject to all the constraints of open meeting law. And so if we direct Mr. Senior to put together the working group and it works under his direction, then,
Okay.
we don't need to do open meeting law because it is a working group bringing it back to the public meeting, right? Versus if you have a public working group that's really truly a committee, then you need to comply with open meeting law and post meetings and agendas and all that. So that's just sort of the difference and the different flexibilities. Jack, do you have any thoughts?
No, I just, that clarifies something I was trying to figure out why we were doing it in that manner, and that's why. Okay.
Yeah. Anything, Chris, you want to add in?
I think it looks good. I especially like that it includes a report on the peer community data to help us get a sense of how we stack up relative to similar communities in the Commonwealth.
And just for the public's edification, and we can continue to tweak this, but so what I've tried to put together is a list of, and this is just a straw man. This is a list of the various items that we've been talking about. For example, roads and sidewalks, where we estimate right now, the work for this associated with roads and sidewalks is approximately 1 million a year for 10 years to try to catch up. But I appreciate that could be changing based on what this Roads and Sidewalks Committee comes out with. And we're considering a special stabilization fund here, although maybe that will change if we have impact fees, right, that are being paid into a road and sidewalk fund. We know we have an outstanding Fields and Rec project. We know based on the last few meetings that the project is estimated to cost 3.6 million. You know, we have been talking about potentially using CPC funding and other existing non-new tax resources if we can to pay for that. Police and fire, we know we have needs there. I put a straw man down of 5 to 15 million because I think there's a lot of unknowns in there. And so here, I think we're looking at the potential for a special stabilization fund, also potentially a debt exclusion as we learn and think about options. Same deal with town hall, same estimate, same caveats there. School facilities, so we know we got from the school facilities committee an initial sort of straw man list for repairs and renovations over the next 10 years, which is approximately 40 million as they go through all of the schools buildings. We also know that there's a project potentially contemplated at the middle and high school. That amount is unknown. The scope is unknown, whether it's renovation, partial renovation, new build, we just don't know. But we know that there's activity underfoot there. And so again, I'm just listing sort of the projects that are out there or the issues that are out there. And so moving forward, I don't know if the board wants to consider and think about this more. If you just want to say, just go forward and start doing and then come back to us and provide reports, including an initial report. Paul?
I would say go forward. If I need to make, do I need to make a motion for that?
I'm in the same place with the caveat that we're going to have feedback along the way.
Yeah. Ellen, is there anything that you wanted to?
Well, I have a lot of questions, but maybe now's not the time,
Okay.
you know, to talk about it. Some of the parameters, 30 years of our taxing approach. Like I'd like to kind of understand like where do we come up with 30? I probably have, Chris, the 10 years of capital expenditures by department because I was tracking it for school. So, I mean, there's some details in here. The 40 million for the school facility, I went through it. I don't know, Michelle, did you vet that $40 million? You vetted that number?
So it's in the vetting process.
Okay. Straw man for now. It's none of these, just to be clear, none of these are like actual.
No, I understand that, but so, you know, maybe at another point.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think what we can do is, and again, just for the public's clarity, what we, the select board, are looking at is a memo where we're ultimately directing Mr. Senior to work with the chairs of the select board, school committee, capital budget advisory, and their designees, which is a great change, to report on summaries of our capital spending, our operational spending, our taxing approach. We should have data through the DOR at least back 30 years. A report on the summary of our infrastructure, capital, operational, current and expected needs, peer community data, which we have and we've already pulled and are looking at. And then to Mike's earlier comment, asking the group to recommend a framework and options for how we can responsibly finance our needs, including through stabilization funds, debt exclusions, or other options, and then recommend policies and procedures for special stabilization funds or other amendments to policies as merited, with the goal of trying to get a 10-page initial report to the select board by August 1st, and then a final draft by the 31st with check-ins along the way. Yes.
Yeah, I strongly say that we all have to understand it's a moving target in a lot of it, but I think deadlines are required in this. We've not had deadlines for years, and I think we need to know August 1st is great. Let's get it done. Let's get some things we can really start addressing, and I think it's good to move forward, and thank you for a great memo, Chief.
Thank you, Jack. Appreciate that. So would anyone like to make a motion based on the memo that I tried to summarize with the tweak of, or designees of the chairs if someone couldn't make it for some reason?
I'd make that motion. I think I just made it.
Okay.
Make a motion to
And direct Mr.
to
Senior.
direct Mr. Senior to work with a working group committee or their designee to come up with proposals and share with the boards as detailed in the memo. And I think that's a good motion.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. All right, so town manager update. Oh, right on time.
Tomorrow morning, milling and road resurfacing work begins on the stretch down in Church Street to the Situate line. A reverse 911 going out tonight.
Down at 7 p.m. tonight too.
So went out, hopefully, at 7 p.m. tonight to the immediate area. Everyone who goes through that should be aware that tomorrow, for a couple of days, it'll be a little bit slow. There'll be details up there to control it. And the goal is to get it done. I think they'll have it done in a couple of days. It's not a very long stretch. A little further down the street, Beechwood, the main line work should be complete by the end of the week, which is a big milestone. The next set of work will be transitioning the houses from the temporary line to the main line. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but this is a big benchmark that the main line, the new main line will be already in the ground.
And Chris, just for edification, Church Street from the Situate line all the way to Wampatuck, essentially?
No, not all the way to Wampatuck, to Beechwood.
Oh, to be, yeah, okay.
So it down along the park to the corner with Beechwood. Does not go all the way.
It veers off towards the baseball park.
Okay.
Because they're going to fill in the other stuff after we still work on the general store.
That's the heaviest use.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so,
Just want to clarify.
yeah, that's that part. And then the part that's under construction from Beach Reading was driven that is basically from the little culvert there where the water, Bound Brook goes all the way to King Street. So that there's a big milestone hopefully this week. More work to go. The Hingham and Crossing Fire Department is jointly trained on Nero's Law. You heard a presentation on that at the board a couple weeks back. That's about now allowing the first responders to treat and transport police canines injured in the line of duty. So joint training that took place. And Justin and I spoke this week. He's begun a campaign to encourage people to sign up for boards and committees. So that work has begun. Flyers and graphics, the first one comes out on Friday. He's working on a video. The first one will come out on Friday. And if anyone has any other further ideas you see, please share them. So the goal is to encourage people to sign up for boards and committees. We're on boards and committees to encourage other people to be on committees. So Justin recruited a few people to say, I'm on a board because of this. You should join too, that kind of stuff. So it's person-to-person contact. All of you are also the best cheerleaders. Go out there and shake the trees, recruit your friends before they run away. Make sure they're sitting down and give them a drink or whatever you need to do before you sign them up. I actually had some constituents come in to talk about something the other day. And after we worked through that problem, I said, so what do you do? And so I got them thinking about joining a board and committee. So we're constantly recruiting. So that's out there now too. So there's more than 40 seats whose terms are expiring. Doesn't mean some of those members aren't going to want to be reappointed, but there's a big list. You all have that list. Again, so we're the social media and other trees are being shaken. So that's my update.
Okay, well, thank you, Chris. We are at select board comments. Mr. Grady.
I want to thank Chris and Justin for getting the roads and sidewalk webpage up. Big plus. There was a number of people asking about it. And so if anyone's hearing, they can encourage, they can put in suggestions. And so I just want to say thank you very much because the committee's starting to take shape and good things are getting done, I think.
Mr. Plex?
Nothing to add.
Okay, Mr. Cree? Any select board comments?
I just would reiterate what I just said about Gene's memo. I think it's excellent that we're finally moving forward and getting a comprehensive look at our financial things and setting deadlines to get this done because we really get it done. Thank you, Gene.
I just have one request. I think I brought it up at the last meeting. If we could get, maybe Chris, you wanted as well, a copy of the FY 23 goals that the select board set, because you've referenced a few times about carrying forward some goals. So it's not on the webpage. And then we should probably, perhaps it's on a future agenda, but set special town meeting schedule, kind of get it firmed up so the other boards and committees know how much, work they need to do this summer.
Yes, we plan to do that after our goals. Which will
Okay.
potentially influence that. Anything else? No? Okay. I would like to thank Mr. Mike Sardinia, who I know, in addition to all the other members of the Roads and Sidewalk Committee, has put in a lot of time. He has, in particular, really devoted a lot of his professional skills and talents to the town in the context of trying to come up with plans that would otherwise be very expensive for us to buy. So I just wanted to express my thanks to him as well as our other committee members for their great work.
I'd
So
like to
thank you.
second that.
Okay, we are at approval of minutes for May 9th, 2023. Which I think only Jack, Paul, and I can vote on because you were not on yet. So it's the last set before we go to the full board approval.
So let's hang out for an hour and keep them waiting.
Jack or Paul, any edits to the minutes that you see? Jack,
Motion
you,
to approve.
okay.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. No one is opposed? Okay. All right, there are no topics not reasonably anticipated within 48 hours. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you all.